Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of introducing our featured speaker today. My name is Tony Bowers, and I am an instructor in the creative writing and composition departments here at COD. Poet, novelist, essayist. Erika L. Sanchez is a woman of many literary talents. This fall, she will release not one, but two books. Her book of poems, Lessons on Expulsion, and her young adult novel, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. Both are available for pre-order at Amazon.com. Erika has received a Cantu Mundu Fellowship, Breadloaf Scholarship, and a 2013 Discovery Boston Review Prize. In 2015, Erika was awarded a Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. Erika is a Fulbright scholar, and as a journalist, her work has been published in The Guardian, Rolling Stone, Al Jazeera, Salon, BuzzFeed, Jezebel, Kirkus Review, and others. She was recently named a 2017-2019 Princeton Arts Fellow, which is a really big deal. The awards and distinctions are numerous, and they continue to go on. But what stands out to me is her fearlessness. Erika uses the power of her words to challenge outdated conventions and thoughts on race, identity, and gender. She is a literary activist that truly pushes the boundaries. I, the Creative Writing Committee, and the greater College of DuPage community would like to welcome Ms. Erika L. Sanchez.
Good morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm going to begin with a poem titled Quinceañera. Quinceañera. Summer boredom flutters its sticky wings. You guzzle cooking wine, gag on the old whiskey you find in the pantry. In the warmth of your bedroom, you pierce your navel with a safety pin, slice the skin you hide beneath your billowy dresses. Glitter-eyed in the murky dance clubs, you snort blow until the dregs trickle down your throat and shock your sluggish heart. You dance in the frenetic lights, the ounce vibrating your face and skull until morning. But everywhere, the pain suckles you. Everywhere, you hold its lumpy head to your breast like a saint. A fat man in a basement tattoos a scraggly moon on your hip, anything to smother the soft and constant vertigo, to stitch a spirit so riddled with leeches. Some evenings you brim with the sky's quiet bruising, colors as beautiful as the spilled brains of a bird, such a fucked holiness, you think. Weeping, you read Walt Whitman, The Blow, the quick loud word, the tight bargain, the crafty lure. You hold a mirror to study your tender socket. May we eat and drink in remembrance of the body. Oh, how the salt sings. One morning you cut your hair slowly, then shear it altogether. Whether that which appears so, or is it all flashes and specks? In that slurry of August, the silence climbs you like a man until you hear the meaty flaps of God inside you. Narco. Highway of death, the indifference of snakes. Sky is ripe and everywhere the colors are breaking. ¿Quién es el jefe más jefe? In the filmy stillness, Possum Face carries a bucket of heads and spills them like marbles. La hierba, el polvo, las piedras, que traguen fierro los cabrones, yo soy el más chingón de Pisaflores. Rompemadres, gazing at mountains the color of elephant skin, pulls a woman from a bus and on to the thorns and dirt. White hiss, of heat, hummingbirds, milkweed. A pack of spotted horses turn to the foaming moon. May God bless you all and lead you toward righteousness. Under the final gash of light, Rompemadres wipes the sweat from his eyes and ties her panties to a creosote bush, a colony of vultures waiting for its tribute. I swear I'm a lot more fun in real life. My poetry is very dark, but I like to think that there is also hope in it. This next poem is titled La Cueva, and this is based on what is known to be the oldest drag bar in the country. The glittering women swing their hips like eternal bells. With pink histrionic mouths, they sing, "Who is this in the mirror? Why won't you love me? Why won't you let me be?" The costumes are small eruptions, fabrics twisted and impossibly stitched, a geisha bride, a cowgirl princess. Beneath the unforgiving lights, the synthetic yellow wigs startle the brown clay of skin. Briefly, we see how they've learned to wipe the smeared mirrors inside them. The men with the factory hands raise their fingers to the hormone-softened faces, a love flimsy as a wet yellow dress. In the darkness, the matronly breasts hang low and exhausted, though there won't be children to nurse from them. The body is not a hieroglyph, but a triumph. In the morning, the men will rise for mass with their wives. They'll sing, "El Señor resucitó." And as they clap their hands, Alleluia, the smell, that singular funk that springs from the body, will weep from their calloused palms. So I think my bio sounds kind of fancy, but I will say that it took me 10 years to write this book. And my next book is titled Crying in the Bathroom, so that'll tell you how I spent my 20s. So look forward to that, please. Lavapiés, Madrid, Spain. Ripe fruit in my hands at the market, the sharp smell of ginger. I wait 6 months for him to visit me here, like a body on the verge of fever. My tiny kitchen that week, pots hissing, smoke swirling. The January air slips in from an open window. Broken cinnamon sticks. Frost. After dinner, we crush the moist hash, mix it with cheap tobacco, and roll it in rice paper. When we are heavy with lentils and smoke, we braid our bodies together on my twin bed. I dig my face into his beard. The neighbors are yelling in Arabic, and I can't sleep when he is next to me. For breakfast, we eat 2 slippery eggs and drink coffee with frothy cream. At noon, we finally manage to unhook ourselves and leave my apartment. It's Sunday and the streets of Lavapiés are fresh with dog shit. And the bohemians with the ragged hair are playing guitar on the corner of Valencia and Miguel Servet. Women wrapped in orange saris are bargaining for vegetables. As we pass the rotisserie chickens in a cafe window, the 3-legged dog follows us, begs us for food. That night on the train to the airport, I watch an ugly baby being breastfed by its gorgeous mother. He nudges me, says to stop staring, stop being rude. I tell him that I am thinking about his wife, and he asks me if I could stand it, and I say yes. At night, when he is gone, I massage cocoa butter onto my nipples, rub my shaved legs on clean sheets, hold my fingers in my mouth until I fall asleep. Today, I stand in a grocery store, digging my nails into a ginger root, smelling it like a goddamn fool. My mom says there's no such thing as an ugly baby, but I disagree. Lessons on expulsion. I discipline my waist and lean against the heated coconut. The day is gray as a face, and my skin clear as the hoof marks in the carmine. What is God to me but an open-mouthed stranger? I stepped across a viper, and still the forked tongue flickers in my hollow. You see, my lust will never know death nor harvest. Elixir of hellebore, colocynth, salt stick, and mouse shit. I run in circles and bathe in the hateful river. This grain, this wild, greedy thing he's left me plumping, so paltry and mulish. Mercury, mandrake. I am only a girl with this brilliant black nest of eagerness. Over and over, my mother calls to me, my name a reckless ribbon in the gloaming. When the clouds part like stupid lovers, I close my eyes and press myself against the eucalyptus tree. I let the leeches crawl until nightfall. So that poem was born of a rabbit hole of research. I am very interested in reproductive rights and justice. And so I just started to think about different kinds of abortion techniques throughout history. And so that led me to discover all of these interesting methods. And so that's really what the poem is about, the lengths that women go to in order to control their own bodies. This next poem is about the indigenous civilization that I descend from. My family is from northern Mexico, and according to my research, these are likely the people that we are from. On the eve of the Tepehuan Revolt, November 1616. They are so wretched, these sons of dogs have nothing with which to pay tribute. Tepehuan akahi hiheme. A naked man under a cypress skins a coyote. Oh, Father, forgive us our daily terrors. What creatures are we, thinking the gobs of darkness? Rabid with Cocolitzli, I ask pardon for those who do not adore thee. Even those who suckled upon your language still howl to the stars when they shake with pestilence. Each night I dream of scissors. Cría cuervos y te sacarán los ojos. On this feast of the Blessed Virgin, I watch a band of gaunt horses gather in a hushed circle, silence, so tentacled, so deep, it grows its own silence. Guerra a fuego y sangre. When the bones clatter from the sapodilla trees, when the rope suckers pray beneath the angry smear of mourning, my love comes slithering. What is life but a cross over rotten water? I don't know if any of you have taken those DNA tests to find out your racial and ethnic makeup, but I did that a few years ago, and it was fascinating. And so I learned that I was 29% Native, and I assume those are the people that I descend from. So I highly recommend it. It's fascinating. Also 7% African, just I had no idea. So you never know. People are constantly, intermixing, and cultures are constantly fluctuating. So it's, I think it's important to remember that we're not, no one's pure. That idea is really, I think, backwards and harmful. Crossing. La golondrina que de aquí se va, o si en el viento se hallará extraviada, buscando abrigo y no la encontrará. Pedro Infante. My parents leave the land blooming with dust, locusts, their long hair trailing behind them, into the wet flesh, ochre of the desert, ghost flowers, Spanish needles, north. Right there across the river, there are all kinds of magical instruments, and we keep on living here like donkeys, and we keep treading on the wires. They move through turbid water, air thick with mosquitoes. Sometimes coyotes are not desert wolves. They're men with mustaches, mirrored sunglasses who shove my shivering parents into the trunk of a Cadillac, who study my mother's wet, startled body. In Chicago, we live in basements. The rattle of heaters, jaundiced paint, the smell of beans boiling, breaking up their skins, everything fried up in pig grease. The roaches make nests in our toys. One makes its way inside my shoe and comes out in school. Another crawls inside my brother's ear to start a home until my mother drowns it out with alcohol. I exist because you see me. You will not work like us. You will not work like a donkey, my mother says, in factory heat, the murmur of machines. My meek brother inside his bedroom reading The Grapes of Wrath, the Communist Manifesto, The Catcher in the Rye. He is a good son. Meanwhile, I carve my body with pre-Columbian numbers, dye my hair indigo, crimson, plot rebellion. I say conscience when I mean conscious. To the doctor, I describe the pain as existential tumors. I say that the cuts are bloodletting. I crossed the Atlantic like no one in my family ever has to live among the civilized, drink wine and read Cervantes, back to the motherland, some tell me. But this is not my mother. This looks nothing like my mother. When I am asked where I am from, what can I possibly say? I am you in part, I suppose, I want to say, but I don't. 487 years ago, people here crossed the ocean and savagely fused with the inhabitants. 467 years later, my parents crossed the border in the trunk of a Cadillac. I was born in Chicago. I dance in the foreign streets, devour oysters until I feel guilty like candles and believe in God. I smoke until my mouth hurts. While I'm at the Prado enjoying Goya and Velázquez, my father is rising before the sun to assemble air filters. On my way home, I want to read a poem aloud on the metro about my illiterate grandmother, about my father with the glue burns on his hands. Sometimes between sleep and waking life, I think I'm in another city. The mornings taste like bruises. I call my mother to explain how I scour landscapes, fold them, and keep them in a soft leather bag. I tell her how I want to understand the violence tangled in this tissue, the desert threaded in this flesh. So the year I lived in Spain, I tried so hard not to appropriate their accent because I found it really irritating. And so once I was on the phone with my mother, I don't know, my mother keeps showing up in these poems, and I heard myself lisp. I think I said gracias, and then I was so ashamed. I could not get over it. I was like, wow, I just really betrayed my family. I betrayed my people. So that was a very interesting moment. But you live in a different country and you just kind of pick up the way people speak. But I tried very consciously not to. And I was laughed at a lot. They thought it was really cute my Mexican Spanish. I was like, it's a language. Like, you guys colonized, and then hundreds of years of creating a culture created this new Mexican Spanish. So to me, it was just ridiculous. I was like, how are you going to feel superior in that sense? I think it's a very Eurocentric way to see the world. Anyway, this next poem is called Saudade. And saudade is a Portuguese word, and they say there's no real translation for it. So I try to capture it in this poem. In the Republic of Flowers, I studied the secrets of hanging clothes. I didn't know if it was raining or someone was frying eggs. I held the skulls of words that mean nothing. You left between the hour of the ox and the hour of the rat. I heard the sound of two braids. I watched it rain through a mirror. Am I asking to be spared, or am I asking to be spread? Your body smelled like cathedrals, and I kept your photo in a bottle of mezcal, semen salt, wolf's teeth. You should have touched my eyes until they blistered, kissed the skin of my instep. For thousands of years, sealed honey never spoils, won't crystallize. I saw myself snapping a swan's neck. I needed to air out my eyes, the droplets on a spider web, and the grace they held. Who gave me permission to be this person, to drag my misfortune on this leash made of gold? This next one is about the violence in Mexico. I write a lot about that, about the drug cartels and the murders of journalists and students. And this begins with an epigraph. According to a 2015 report from the University of San Diego's Justice in Mexico project, 138,000 people have been murdered in Mexico since 2006. They call it the corner of heaven, a laboratory, a foot at the throat of an empire. Before the holy dirt, the woman with the feline gait waits with tangled hair, mouth agape, the letter X marked on what's left of her breasts and face. Nuestra belleza mexicana. A roped mule watches a man place a crown on her severed head. Tomorrow, the queen will be picked clean by the kindness of the sea. Shuttered shops and empty restaurants, stray dogs couple in a courtyard. Under a swaying palm tree, a cluster of men finger golden pistols, whisper, "Aquí ni se paran las moscas." Two boys transfixed watch a pixelated video. A family fed to a swarm of insatiable pigs. A butcher sweeps blood from an empty street. Death is my godmother, he repeats. Death is a burnt mirror. When the crackling stereo dithers between stations, amor de mis amores, sangre de mi alma, a gaggle of silent children gather before a sputtering trash bin. Together they watch the terror hover like flies. I don't know how to write a happy love poem, so this is called Love Story. This is as close as I've gotten, so bear with me. In a field of broken antlers, I'm holy as the grass where a deer has slept. And still, this is the hell we make together. The pleasure of tangled violins. Each night I inhale my own wings when my skin remembers asters. Understand this, the pull of my womb, why we fuck in a field of dandelions. How loathsome is that? A woman who cuts her name into a cypress. But the story always begins with a lie, doesn't it? A dark room full of birds, where I slapped the bread from your hands and drowned in a bowl of water. So much magical thinking in that swallow of summer. The women in my dreams never came with their mouths open. Blame my salted brain or the fever tree that fingers the sky with questions. Listen, you can hear my heart beat with the humiliation. Yeah, that's pretty depressing, isn't it? That's gonna be my next challenge. A happy love poem. I can't even think of one that I've read that I've liked. That's pretty sad. Anyone? Suggestions? Happy love poems? No? All right. Talk to me later. This next poem is called A Woman Runs on the First Day of Spring. And in this poem, I incorporate a lot of Buddhist philosophy. So I've been Buddhist for 2 years now, and it's something that's really been integrated into my work. It completely changed my life, so it has completely changed my work as well. A woman runs on the first day of spring, Chicago. When I am a stranger to my own ruin, twilight reminds me to give alms to my best sins. March, the city is purging in the humility of worms, salt washing from the grasses. When I breathe in, I say thank you. When I breathe out, I say gone. I say garden. I say guns. 3 crows devour the dead rat. Look at all that booty, the man mutters and blows me kisses. The sky is worthless, and my bulbous ass is always a dinner bell. I run farther. I run with a feather inside my ear. I run from a bird with a broken neck and follow the sound of thawing snow. Aren't we all boundless, though? The way a dream secretes the morning after, the way moths feed on the eyes of fawn, to and not to. Vines that strangle trees never say they're sorry. I reach the lake with this grateful ache in my throat, and if I say my body is its own crumbling country, if I say I am always my own home, then what does that make me? This one's mildly funny, I think. You'll be the judge. Poem of my humiliations. After the salt feast, I watched the bird peck at another bird who was already dead. What I know best is the color of sun through my own eyelids. And like those jubilant saplings, I am always so breathless and ignorant. I once fucked a man who was unspeakably ugly, and it wasn't even winter. What I meant is that I bludgeoned the palm fronds to keep from sobbing. What I mean is that I lit a kite on fire and didn't say I was sorry. The gaze of the deer was nothing if not victorious. I once loved a man who was married to a martyr. No, he was married to a goat. No, he was married to a ladder. What's the difference? I cried on a toilet in the middle of New York City. 4 times in one day, I counted, I promise. That time, I was stunned by my own pudendum, the spell. Then I became ashamed of my shame, etc., infinity until the end of time itself. The vulgarity of the orchid in all of its hooded glory is showy but exquisite. The first time I ever came, the light was weak and carnivorous. I covered my eyes and the night cleared its dumb throat. I heard my mother wringing her hands the next morning. Of course I put my underwear on backwards. Of course the elastic didn't work. What I wanted most at that moment was a sandwich, but I just nursed on this leather whip. I just splattered my sheets with my sadness. I'm gonna read just a few more, and then we could go to the Q&A. This next one, sorry, 43. This next one is called 43, and it is about the students that were murdered in Mexico in 2014. The moment before death, the air inexplicably tastes of wet horse. The chest expands and something unspools like wet vines in this land of child brides and teenage assassins. A bus full of students dissolves into the mountain mist. A retinue of beheaded journalists mouth clues while the young president delivers platitudes. But what do they matter? The students don't know the kilos of heroin stored below them. A boy of 18, eyes gray as bathwater, charts a man's face under his black mask. Why even bother, the boy wonders. The night's only witnesses, the stars, an ocelot, a single strand of hair caught in a barbed wire. Even the sopilotes won't eat the glut of the unsayable. The bloodbirds hiss and grunt while a man with pointed teeth whistles a love song. Why waste time with metaphors? The body is kindling. The body is a plastic bouquet shriveled at a crossing. The trees bow and weep, but everybody knows the rain revises nothing. The charred bones belong to no one. Beyond the verdant mountain, a caravan of mothers and fathers beg a cankered country for the locusts of cruelty. Farther, a troop of camouflaged men burn fields of red poppies, those lovely flowers of happiness and squalor. Donkey poem. I think donkeys get a bad rap. I think they're very cute and very sweet. And so I wanted to pay homage to them. Donkey poem. Gentle beast, you carry Jesus to Jerusalem. And Jesus looks at the city and weeps for it. Equus asinus, spine sucker, thistle eater, you lay unburied in the Sierra Madre's sun, patas para arriba. The vultures already gorging on your stringy haunches. Burro humilde, burro sufrido, bestia de la melancolía. On a frozen mountainside, a peasant will dismount you and weep as he tears into your vermilion meat. Am I not thine ass upon which thou hast ridden ever since I was thine until this day? Erotic toiler, stubborn ungulate, the ass of every punchline. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. 5,000 years you plow the cracked earth and arrive with your crumbling hooves. A room full of howling men whose eyes swell with thirst and fever. Burro humilde, burro sufrido. A dark and trembling woman undresses and kneels before you. This last poem is titled 6 Months After Contemplating Suicide. Admit it. You wanted the end with a serpentine greed. How to negotiate that strangling mist, the fibrous whisper. To cease to exist and to die are two different things entirely. But you knew this, didn't you? Some days you knelt on coins in those yellow hours. You lit a flame to your shadow and ate scorpions with your naked fingers, so touched by the sadness of hair in a dirty sink, the malevolent smell of soap. When instead of swallowing a fistful of white pills, you decided to shower, the palm trees nodded in agreement, a choir of crickets singing behind your swollen eyes. The masked bird turned to you with a shred of paper hanging from its beak. At dusk, hair wet and fragrant, you cupped a goat's face and kissed his trembling horns. The ghost, it fell prostrate, passed through you like a swift and generous storm.
Erika, what do you love about Buddhism?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I've struggled with depression for most of my life. I think that's pretty clear from my poems. And for me, Buddhism has provided me a sense of unshakable hope. And it's given me a really solid foundation. I think to remember that we're all interconnected is really important. I think that's a very beautiful idea, that everything that we do in this life has an effect, whether you know it or not. Everything counts. And so I like to remember that when I'm feeling pretty hopeless about the administration, for instance, we can enact change. And it may seem really futile and depressing at times, but everything that we do matters. And so there's this book that I really love. She's also Buddhist, Rebecca Solnit, and the book is called Hope in the Dark. That book is about the Bush era and finding hope in dark times. And so I think, to me, the philosophy is something that is completely logical and reassuring. I also enjoy the fact that as a woman, is very liberating. I feel that for me, I had a really hard time with Christianity. I grew up Catholic, and it was difficult for me to beg a higher being, especially one that is considered a man or male or whatever. And so in Buddhism, you worship a law. You don't worship a person. The law of cause and effect. And I think also the idea of suffering is very reassuring. In Buddhism, we acknowledge that suffering is a given. It's going to be a part of life through sickness and death and aging and all of that. But Buddhism asks you what you're going to do in response to it, instead of feeling hopeless. And I often felt hopeless before I found the practice. I was like, well, why is this happening to me? But now that I have this practice, I'm like, well, what am I going to do about it? And how am I going to turn this poison into medicine? So my difficult experiences, for me, I transform them by writing about them and trying to make them beautiful in that way, and trying to connect with other people. I grew up in Cicero. Yeah, Cicero and Cermak. I didn't read this poem about that neighborhood, but where I grew up, there was a lot of crime, and there was a motel on the corner in which prostitutes used to use. And as I was growing up, I was so perplexed. I was like, what are these ladies doing? Why do they look so sad? And I realized as an adult, I wrote a lot about sex workers, and I didn't really realize why. And then this partner that I had, he was like, well, it's because you grew up with prostitutes on your corner. Like, it was the most obvious thing. And I was like, oh yeah, like that's why I write about hookers. Okay, so it was a very interesting childhood, I will say. And that's a long answer to that very simple question. Thank you.
What would you say was probably the most pivotal work of writing for you? Like, the one that influenced you the most?
Ever?
Sure.
Oh, man. Whew. So many different people and experiences and actually different art forms have influenced me. So it's like asking who's your favorite child. Like, is it fair? Let's see. Recently, I'll stick to what has affected me the most recently. Rebecca Solnit, who I mentioned earlier, the way she writes about hope has given me a lot of strength. She's an incredible prose writer. She's feminist and writes about gender. And when I read her essays, I hope to be half as good. Also, Toni Morrison. I feel like if I ever met her, I would just drop dead. She is one of the best writers that has ever lived, in my opinion. She's incredible. If you haven't read Beloved yet, please do so. It is amazing.
Have you ever worked closely with other poets?
Yeah, they're terrible. Poets are really intense, kind of crazy, but also really wonderful. So when I was in high school and I was writing poetry, I felt like very lonely. I was like, there was no one else doing it. I was like the only weirdo girl with the funny hair, writing poems, right? And my outfits were really ridiculous, by the way. I was just like that classic, weird girl. And I felt very, very lonely. And then as I grew up, I started to find other people who did it too. And I was like, oh my God, I found my people. So yeah, poets are kind of terrible and dramatic and I don't know. They're just unpredictable, but they're also my family. So I've worked with poets quite a bit. Not necessarily on actual poems. I've never collaborated with anyone on a poem, but through events and teaching and things like that, yes.
Have you noticed any differences in the content and style of writing of your second book compared to your first?
Oh, definitely. Well, so I have 3 books. So the poetry collection that I read from, that one, like I said, took 10 years. Then I have the novel, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. And that obviously is prose, so that's very, very different. And then I have what I'm working on now called Crying in the Bathroom, like I mentioned, and that's a book of essays. So I'm working in all 3 genres. The novel was incredibly fun to write. There was a lot of crying, but also a lot of laughing as I wrote it. It took me 5 years to write that one. And for me, fiction gives me the opportunity to be funny. I can't do that so much in poetry. And so in the novel, I just have that freedom to make fun of things. And the protagonist is a snarky teenager. So she's a real asshole. And it was just so fun to create this person, right? And she's very flawed, but I think very lovable in some ways. And I became really attached to this make-believe character. There's also a character that I always joke about who I hate in the book. I created her aunt Milagros, and she's just awful. And so when I think about her, I kind of get mad. I'm like, but I created this person. I created this character. She's not real. So it's really fun to create a whole world. So my books are very, very different. Poetry is very concise and condensed, and it sounds more serious than I am in real life. So fiction gives me that outlet, and also nonfiction. My essays are also humorous, some of them, and I interweave criticism and pop culture and history and my own experiences, and to braid those things together is really fascinating and fun and excruciating at the same time.
In the works that you showed us today, there were numerous,
Okay, sorry.
there were numerous instances where you referenced game animals, deer, antlers, horns, things like that. Was there an influence behind that, or is it just coincidental?
Wow, you're perceptive. I hadn't noticed that for a long time. I recently noticed that, like, I have a lot of antlers in my book, and in fact, on the cover, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a woman wearing antlers. There's no particular reason. I think it's just I think they're very beautiful, and I'm pretty mesmerized by certain animals, and those are, to me, just really stunning. I think I have actually I think a caribou. Elk antler that a friend gave to me, and it's like sitting next to, it's on my nightstand table, and I just love looking at it. I just think it's so incredible, the fact that it was like alive but not. And so, yeah, I just think they're really pretty creatures, basically.
Hi, right here. I just want to point out your Spanish is very beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know you grew up in Cicero. I actually grew up in Berwyn. So
Hey.
next to hey.
Cool.
So I would definitely look into your book. I really want to read more about it. And then also, my question is, growing up in I'm Mexican household. So your parents were first generation Mexicans? Okay.
Yeah, my parents immigrated in 1978. They crossed the Tijuana border with a coyote, and then got into the trunk of a Cadillac, like in the poem, and and passed border patrol that way. And so I write a lot about borders and immigration and belonging to two different worlds. I think the experience of being Mexican American is something that's not really written about all that much. And so that's why I felt like I needed to write this novel, for instance, because I never read anything like that when I was growing up. I was like, I need to write the book that I needed. So that experience, I think, is really rich, and it's not shared as much as it should. And I think that comes from like issues with publishing. I think there are a lot of talented people out there, but we're not allowed into the canon. And that's something that I fight for. That's why I'm kind of an overachiever, because I'm like, nah, fuck that shit. We're gonna do this. And so that's just super important for me to like break down those barriers.
When you lived in Spain, what sort of impact did a European setting have on your work as opposed to an American one?
Well, I had a lot of time, which was really nice. I had very few responsibilities. I was 22. I was an English assistant teacher, and I didn't really have to do all that much. So the way that Europeans live is really appealing to me. The mindfulness, enjoying meals, for instance. I think Americans are so conditioned to just keep going and be stressed and like be busy. Whereas in other countries, people just enjoy their time on Earth. They enjoy sitting together and talking to one another. They enjoy resting in the middle of the day, which is, I think, something that Americans really don't do much of. I still nap. I love napping. It was just an incredible experience. I also had, I took a poetry class every Thursday, and the people that I met there were just so amazing. And to just stay up all night drinking beer and talking about poetry with people, it was like a dream come true for me. It was like everything I've ever wanted. So it was pretty transformative in many different ways.
Oh, hey. Do you have any advice for aspiring poets?
Oh, man. It's been a long, difficult road, I will say. But if you feel that you have to write poetry, you have to commit to it. I feel that when people ask about choosing it as a career, I'm like, does it feel like you're gonna die if you don't write poetry? And if the answer is no, I'm like, don't do it, because it is so hard to be recognized. It's taken so long, and the odds are really against you. And not to discourage anyone, but I feel like if you feel that that's your destiny in life, then you should definitely pursue it as a career. But if the passion isn't quite there, then I wouldn't bother. I would do something else because it's hard, for sure.
Do you remember your first book that you read when as a kid, or like some of your influences as a child?
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe was my favorite when I was 12. And when I read his poetry, I was like, wow, I was just blown away. The music of it, the beauty and the despair, it was something that I really connected to. So it was a little dark for a 12-year-old for sure, but I thought it was lovely.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really enjoyed the
Thank
reading.
you.
My question is about your process.
Sure.
And obviously it's going to be different for each of the mediums that you work in, but it takes a long time, and can you just tell us a little bit about the process you go through with poetry, for example?
Sure. Yeah. It probably makes no sense to people. When people ask about my process, I really have to think about it because my whole life is writing. And so it's hard for me to separate writing from anything else. Like, I think about it all day. I have a notebook in my bag at all times. I read obsessively. I need a lot of alone time for sure. I like write on public transportation. Whenever I see an image that I think is beautiful, I write it down. So the process for me is just like never ending. Everything that I take in could be part of my writing. And there's a lot of weird stuff that I do, like I play certain music and pace around my apartment and sit in silence. I chant, as a Buddhist, I chant in the morning and at night, and then things come to me at those moments. And so it's like a never-ending process. So I don't know how helpful that is. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, actually, relating back to your question earlier, I'm writing an essay about Buddhism and how it has transformed my life. And so to articulate your inner life, your spiritual existence is so hard. So I'm just like sitting in front of my computer with my mouth open, just like completely paralyzed, just not knowing how to explain what it's like to have that faith, to be transformed by it. And so that's something that I've been working on. I'm also, next is an essay that I've been meaning to write about my time in Spain. And it's about globalization and race and colonialism and looking back at my ancestry and things like that. So with looking at my DNA and kind of charting like where I come from. So those have been percolating, and nonfiction for me, like I write a paragraph and I'm exhausted. It's excruciating. I don't know what it is about nonfiction, but I feel like emotionally spent always. But also it's very satisfying at the same time. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Time for one more.
How old were you when you first started writing poetry, and how did you decide it was something you were passionate about?
I was 12, and at that time I decided I was going to be a poet, and that's the only thing I've ever wanted to be. I wanted to be a writer, and so the reason that I started writing, I think, is because I was really lonely, and I had a lot of had a crazy imagination, and no one really understood it. And a teacher seemed to notice that I had talent, and so she encouraged me to write, and so I haven't stopped writing since. Thank you.